Hey everyone, welcome back to Cross Creek Cut. I'm Brad.
And I'm Kyle.
Well, Kyle, today we're going to take some time to talk about corn and beans. Really exciting what we do here at Cross Creek, right?
Right.
Most of our crop that we take care of. But looking at the fact that we're either partially planted right now, some people are fully planted down south. We got corn that's up and V6, V7.
Yep.
Down in the northern delta. Just kind of a mixed bag of everybody we work with and take care of. The question being is, what do we do now? If our crop's in the ground or let's hopefully here, by the end of May, everybody gets their crop in the ground if this rain would stop. But it feels like here in the upper Midwest, it never stops.
More coming today.
Yeah, so, it's going to be an issue. But the question being is, once we get side dress done, if you're side dressing or wide dropping, we get into the point of foliar.
Right.
There's a lot of discussion, a lot of questions wrapped around foliar and what do we do with foliar? What are we looking for in corn and beans? What are the things that really come into mind? And so I'm going to kind of take time, and Kyle and I are going to take some time here to discuss that. Kyle, what are some of the big things I guess you could look at that we're worried about we'll start on corn. Corn's king, everyone loves it, right?
Right. I think a big thing is, for anybody out there that, attended our winter meeting or have heard bits and pieces of it is, does foliar work? Does it not work? That's the biggest question of, why and what. To me, it goes back to the same principles that we have with our, plant application is we've got some of those foundational pieces that just work regardless of the crop and the reasoning. You guys hear us talk a lot about Brix levels, sugar, pushing carbon. Obviously, boron from us and from a lot of other people in the industry have become a big thing over the years. So, I think we should kind of start there with some of those foundational pieces. And then really from there, it's just a matter of, if you are tissue sampling, paying attention to those tissue samples. If you're not tissue sampling, I would urge you to, get started at it, pick a couple fields, kind of get a good baseline of where you're at.
Yeah, we tissue sample a lot. I think everybody that knows us has kind of got to the point where, let's be honest, we spend a lot of money on tissue sampling. But the fact of the matter is we're doing it because there's a lot of research behind it, trying to look at what things are happening inside and outside of the plant. Matter of fact, this year we're going to be tissue sampling a lot more. Right. I think we've kind of moved the protocol up to once a week now, which is going to be extensively expensive because so much fun spending money right now, right?
Yeah, a lot of it, like you said, is because of the research and, our dirt research that we're doing here and, trying new products, looking at different mixes. But if you really think about it, whether you're doing research or not, what do you really know unless you are tissue sampling? Take it away from agriculture, if you go to the doctor for your yearly physical, sure they can, listen to your heart, poke you, prod you, do whatever they're going to do. But how do you really know what's going on until you get that blood test? That tissue sample is that blood test for your crops to know where you are deficient, where you may be high, what you need, and then we can use, just generally what we know about crops, what they need at different intervals, and also, the weather that we've had to decide, additions and subtractions. And I think that's where people get in trouble a lot is, we look at, foliar applications just like we look at anything else. So, well, we've always done it, or we always put this on, or...
Yeah. Well, you mentioned dirt, and you got your dirt shirt on. You actually have some dirt on you. Did you actually do some work today?
Yeah, pretty boy. Some of us actually get out of the office and do something around here.
Yeah, well, hey, we can't all be winners, kid, all right? But no, let's kind of dive down in the corn real quick. So on the foliar side, Kyle, everyone knows we're big on using foliars, and we just don't blanket apply foliars for the giggles of it. There's a systematic approach, and there are some foundational pieces that we work with and products we work with that are specifically designed on the foliar side of things. But I want to kind of reel in the pre-tassel time and post-tassel time because it's very different what we're looking for. And so one of the things that I look at in our tissue sampling that we get, obviously this year it's going to be every week, but on the pre-tasseling side of things, I'm looking at in that V12 time all the way to tassel, I'm looking at what's our pollen health and pollination going to be, what's going to be shifting from vegetative growth to reproductive growth. Because ultimately speaking, what do we make money on in corn?
The grain.
the grain. So why do we think and spend so much money on foliars when it's at V3? I mean, when you go out there with herbicide, I'm not telling you guys foliars don't work at herbicide time, but really at that herbicide time, really all we need to be focusing on really is pushing Brix levels, some sugars, carbons. You know, you can make some moves with different things from manganese, sulfur, boron. There's a couple of things that can help, but realistically speaking, your money made is in that V12 on.
Right.
As we get to that point. So that's where your money's made. So if we look at that, and we talk about source to sink, right?
Yep.
I mean, what in the world is, we're going to talk about source to sink here during this video for a little bit. You know, what is source to sink?
Yeah, I mean, your source is your factory, whether you're talking corn or beans. It's that energy production, it's that chlorophyll, you know, your ATP. You can go down the list and use all kinds of fancy words and things that you want to use.
Big words.
But at the end of the day, your source is your factory. Your sink is what you just said. It's your grain. It's what we're feeding. The more source, really, the more sink, unless something goes wrong.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's where we take a lot of time to look at, you know, we talk about, we're discussing right here, let's start in at that V12, V13 time. We're pre-reproductive. We're now getting into pollination. And over time, everybody's asked us, you know, what's the one time that you guys, if you had a choice to foliar feed a corn crop, what's the one time? And I think our data's proven this. If you guys look at our V8 to V12 data over the last 5 years, you can go on crosscreekag.com, pull up our dirt research, and look at that multi-year data. That's where a lot of our money's been made in the foliar time frame, is because we've spent a lot of money on, you know, products like Tune-Up B, Exceed, Draft. You can start naming down a list of other things that we're putting in there, really focusing in on the fact that K-Blast, you know, and potassium acetate, those things that we're really pushing levels of K, your stress mitigations. You're trying to get that plant, for lack of better terms, really to pollinate much more efficient. And you talk about source to sink, but there's another big giant term, silk reveal. I mean, we talk about the Vex, but
yeah, your silk to anthesis.
There you go. See, I'm not smart enough to have that term.
You know, different hybrids, you know, genetically are predisposed to further silks first, and then shed pollen, or vice versa. You're not going to change that, but the better that you can line that up, especially if we get into some hot, dry situations, the better. You know, the health of the plant overall, you know, the water movement overall, but you know, boron, I heard you mention Tune-Up B. I mean, out of everything that you just mentioned, Tune-Up B is really the one true element in there that helps with that, but...
Especially with silk emergence, right? Because boron is a very large, I mean, it does a lot of things in the plant, but it's a huge indicator of helping silk emergence match up and be more consistent across the whole entire cob, right? I mean, all the kernel set from tip to butt.
Yeah, I mean, you're really helping push, you know, starting at that butt and then ending at your tip. I mean, it just kind of helps that evenly come out a little bit.
Yep. So that's some of the things that we're kind of working on in that time frame, that pre-tassel. But if you guys have questions on that pre-tassel side of things, give us a call, because we do have some systems, but also, ultimately speaking, if guys are tissue sampling, you know, that helps us get a better idea of what they're lacking in, especially going into, you know, silk emerge and pollination time. That's when we can really affect. And honestly, you know, we didn't use fungicide for a lot of years, and last year we actually put it with it because we had, let's be honest, last year we had late May and June. What happened?
Right. Cool conditions, a lot of wet.
Yep. So you look at some of the corn that's been planted. Let's talk about some of the corn really quick that's been up for the last couple of weeks. I mean, has there been any stress?
A lot.
So, I mean, a lot of water stress, right? Cool, wet conditions. We even got corn that's in the ground still that's went through 2 weeks of cool, wet conditions.
Right.
So there's going to be stresses that are going to happen to that plant, and how do we overcome that? And Kyle, is there any percentage chance that there's a hormonal change in the plant that's went through stress? And you talk about pre-tassel versus post-tassel, getting into reproduction. Does that plant change its hormones?
Definitely.
Okay. So as a plant changes its hormones, its needs for things are going to be dramatically different. Especially,
I mean, right now it's in survival mode. I mean, then again, you guys hear me talk a lot about taking things away from a plant and kind of equating it to the human body. I mean, look what happens to a human when they get, you know, stressed out.
I'm stressed every day, aren't I?
Things change.
He doesn't talk to that.
I'm just going to pay. I mean, things change. I mean, and that's your hormones that change that. I mean, you got stress hormones, all of those different things. I mean, stress hormones in those corn plants right now have to be extremely high, which is a tax on the plant. It's just trying to keep itself alive, which in my mind is, probably taking some off of the top end right now. So how can we help? Once it does dry out, once it does kind of consistently stay warm, what can we do to help that plant just kind of regulate itself, even back out, chill out a little bit, and then take off and do what it's supposed to be doing.
Right, so you talk about that. I mean, guys are asking, okay, I'm going to make one pass across the field with my herbicide. I'm not going to do this V12. I'm going to hire a plane or a drone who go out and spray my fungicide at tassel or even brown silk. I mean, what can I do right now as I go across there and spray herbicide? I mean, the two things that really stand out to me is fulvic acid, carbon through humic acid or fulvic.
Yep.
Make sure your pH is adjusting your water correctly. That's a big deal.
Right.
And probably the next biggest thing I can say is driving sugar levels, driving your Brix levels in the plant. Those are the big three components there that you need to deal with if you're out there spraying herbicide that are, let's be honest, fairly economical.
Right.
I mean, those aren't going to break the bank doing those things to help the stress level of your corn crop that's out there right now struggling. But the next time is that V12, V13 time. We need to really work on that. And most everybody has a sprayer. You can still get over the top of V12 corn.
Yeah.
Most everybody has a sprayer. You don't have to have high clearance.
No,
you can get across it, and you can make some big dividends. And adding fungicide at that point in time, just a cheap oxystrobularin, propiconazole is most generally speaking all people need at that point in time.
Right.
So that's first thing. Second thing, or the biggest thing, I guess, later on down the road at post-tassel is kernel fill time. When we get to brown silk R3, that plant has change hormones. Now we're into grain fill. It's looking at how much it can pump into that kernel. So what are some big takeaways there that we really can push into it?
Yeah, I mean, the next big takeaway is really water movement, plant health, and going back to boron again. I mean, it's needed for different reasons other than that V8 to V12 pass, but late season when we look at boron, we're really talking about protein synthesis, really pushing that starch, pushing everything from that source, that factory that we've made into the kernel. Next big thing is water. Typically we're hot and we're dry. You look at K-blast, the potassium acetate, that's going to help water movement. Sugar, once again, instant energy, raise the metabolism.
Increase nitrogen efficiency.
Yep.
Well, it's an interesting thing. We're talking about some of these high yields, and anybody out there that's trying to raise high yields, or anybody for the matter of fact that's really trying to regulate their plant to maintain yield, there's a lot of talk right now out there about nitrogen to potassium being a 1-to-1 ratio. And everybody's like, well, what do you mean? I put 270 pounds of nitrogen on this corn crop.
Right.
I need 270 pounds or K to make high yields? And the answer to that question is yes. The problem is, how does K get in the plant when you have wet years, you have dry years? I mean, K being mobile and immobile.
Right.
It depends on the time, mineralization, what weather we're having, water,
right.
Stress. I look at it going, there's some people out there that can raise 300 plus bushel corn off 180 pounds in, but their K levels are 1-to-1 on their end. They're actually getting 180 to 200, if not more K.
Yeah, I mean, we've all seen it. I've seen it a million times every single year. Nitrogen's never the limiting factor to high yields. It's always something else and a combination of a couple different things.
Yeah. But everyone wants to put more on, right? It's so fun and sexy to put more nitrogen on, right? It always yields, right?
Always.
And that's a myth that needs busted, and it's getting busted every year more and more with people. So that's kind of our big deal on corn. Obviously, call us, myself, Kyle, Sam, down in the Delta, how we can help you guys from a standpoint of what we can do foliar on corn. Let's flip to beans real quick. Everyone loves talking about beans. Realistically, there's a lot of bean acres planted in the United States this year, maybe even more with delayed planting. It could possibly flip. If we look at we talk about the source to sink on beans and foliar feeding. The first time everybody wants to do is spraying with herbicide.
Right.
A V3R time frame, whether you're spraying Enlist, you're spraying non-GMOs, whatever combination you're doing there, if you're running Extend. The what do we do at that point in time? What are some big things of that early V3R1 that we can really do?
You know, I mean, that time frame is kind of that awkward stage. You know, for corn, it's that V8 to V12. I think that's a really important pass there. It's kind of that awkward stage of, you know, the awkward teenage years. But really in beans, it's the same thing. Depending on when they were planted, what conditions we've had. I mean, nodulization has started. I wouldn't say they're fully ramped up yet. So we kind of go through that, you know, yellowish, limeish green phase in beans. And then, you know, we add another stress on top of them being that herbicide itself is kind of goes back to the sugar, like we talked about, that instant energy, that boost, that shot in the arm to help it, you know, not only keep pushing forward, but, you know, metabolize that herbicide. So, you know, you've got that in there, depending on really where you started with your K levels, kind of some of the conditions we've had, potentially a K-blast application, you know, being that potassium acetate.
Yeah, I mean, that's where you're really trying to drive a lot of that hormonal side of, you know, between sugar, kelp, potassium acetate, obviously going V3 now into R1, what's happening, you're turning reproductive, right?
Right.
Now you're switching into flowers, blooms, you're trying to hold on to as many nodes as possible, but also get those blooms to actually produce a cluster, right? Of what's known as a race. But as you get past that point, the next time everybody says, well, I'm going to piggyback on, I'm only going to come back and spray with my fungicide time. Well, that's fine if that's the only 2 passes you're going to make. If you're trying to drive yourself to higher yields, this is where tissue sampling comes into play on beans. You've got to know every week or every 2 weeks at most what's happening within those plants. And I look at a standpoint, if guys are saying, I'm just going to piggyback, I'm only going to make one application, I'm not a big fan of going at R3 or even early R3. I want to delay that, clearing the R4. And the reason being is, at R4, where are we at?
Basically full pod.
We're max
full pod potential.
Yeah, we're clearly out there. And everybody says, well, the data shows R3 is the right time to put fungicide on. I won't disagree with that with just fungicide.
Right.
Because you're trying to protect more at the top. You're protecting what you got in node 5 through 13 or your money-making nodes on the main stem. But the fact of the matter is, when you get to full pod potential at R4, you're now on a race against the clock and stress of maintaining those pods, right? That bean plant wants to shuck them.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we can, that magical term that you love so much, that source to sink. I mean, that's where we can start talking about that. I mean, typically we see it later season, but I mean, really that's where it starts, is if there's not enough factory, if that factory is not, you know, performing optimally, then, you know, what's the first thing it's going to do? It's going to start shucking pods. It's going to start, you know, maybe if you've got a 3-bean pod, you know, killing one of them off and having a 2-bean pod. I mean, that's where a lot of that's happening.
Yeah. I mean, so you look at that R3 time frame as guys go and put fungicide. I mean, there's some things we just talked about that are foundational. I can't really talk very well.
That word would be foundational.
Yeah. It's really easy. Hooked on phonics works for me. But the real fact of it is your fulvics are a big deal of making fungicides more effective. We know that. We know getting your pH adjusted keeps anything, I don't care if it's herbicide, insecticide, fungicide, foliar nutrition, your pH adjustment in the plant is foundational, because if you don't do that, your efficacy of what you're doing can dramatically be reduced. And sometimes, we're talking hours of application, it's rendered useless if the pH is wrong.
Right.
So that's a big deal of understanding what products you're putting on, what the pH needs to be, and how you need to adjust that. That's where products like, we use pH Max, Burnout, and some other products that we've been working on that are really big in making that water source, protected. Then your fulvics and your sugars like Exceed, and then Draft being a hormonal and more of a stress mitigation type deal to push root development and not allow plant tissue to, suffer. But at that R3 time frame, if guys are putting on with fungicide, those are big deals. And then coming back in with K-Blast or, maybe nano zinc. Zinc's a big topic that not a lot of people have studied, not a lot of people have spent a lot of time on beans, but we're spending a lot of time this year on zinc, how much zinc we're putting on, and understanding how zinc is affecting pod formation, but also kernel development later in the season.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point to kind of talk about too, is we keep talking about K-Blast, which, as you guys know, is our 0029, potassium acetate. The big word there is acetate. That's something that I'm really working on this summer, in dirt, in a lot of our trials, is what else can we get out there in that acetate form? Because I think not only the right product needed, but the right form of that product is very, very important. So, working this year with, not only our K-Blast, but looking at, some potential manganese, zinc, some other forms of acetate, just for, that molecule size, how it reacts foliar, actually getting those products in the plant. Working with that, also working with some other, products that are going to not only change how our manganese, our zinc, our sulfur, whatever gets in the plant, but also kind of affecting what it does once it gets in there. So
Absolutely.
You talked a lot about hormones there on corn. I'll talk about the same thing on beans. So, what can we piggyback on? Nanotechnology is the big buzz in the industry right now. That's
Surely not. Not nanotech.
That's something that maybe we've done ourselves a disservice. I mean, we've been essentially using nanotechnology for 4 or 5 years now, whether it be a true nano product that people are adding in, or just looking at what humic and fulvic acids by nature do.
So true story. We've been using nanotechnology since 2018 at Cross Creek Ag.
Yeah.
We've had nanotechnology in a lot of our products. We just didn't market it that way because we knew it was foundational to make certain products work.
Right.
So there's a big deal inside of that. And we actually added it to a lot of guys' mixes that were using like NanoRev and stuff like that. That was an additional add to it. So that's a big deal with what we're doing here, foliar. That's a big deal to you guys. The one thing I think Kyle and I would agree on probably more than anything else is, I don't care what crop it is, you've got to stay vigilant, you got to stay observant in what you're doing inside your crop. And I said that word observant, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Like I said, hooked on phonics word for me. But you've got to be able to be observant of your crop, and you've got to stay vigilant within what's going on. Just don't plant it and go spray it and be like, it's fine. I expect 80 bushel beans. We'll let the weather identify that. I expect 300 bushel corn, but my crop was stressed a little bit during pollination, but it'll be fine. Right. I mean, we all started with high yield out of the bag. I mean, corn's producing 600 bushel plus, maybe even 800 potential. Beans are fractal and have the ability to produce even more than that. But everybody's like, well, how can we only get 70 bushel beans and 220 bushel corn?
Stress.
100% it's just stress. Everything came down. So allow Cross Creek Ag and our dirt research to help build one brick higher in your wall to make sure this doesn't happen to you. And stay observant of your crop, stay vigilant within your crop, and understand how stress affects your crop. Help your crop get to the finish line, and don't let it die early. Don't let it trip getting across that finish line. That's what we do, and that's how we've made people money, and that's all about ROI and what we're about. So if you got questions, they know who you are, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, they know Kyle. I'm Brad. Give Sam a call. There'll be a lot more videos coming up in this year, a lot more Cross Creek cuts with some things we're going to drop. There's some hints dropping along the way here, but we've got some exciting stuff coming up this year. But I will tell you, this is probably the most exciting with the crop we're dealing with and the stress that we're dealing with. There are ways to make sure your crop gets across that finish line and doesn't trip and fail. So from the Cross Creek cut inside, well, this is not really a studio, but hey, it's our office for right now. Stay tuned. There'll actually be some coming up this summer, starting Cross Creek's podcast. We'll be announcing that and be getting that online. So look forward to that. Other than that, I hope everybody gets planted and hopefully a successful 2026, and let's roll. We'll see you guys on down the road.
Thanks, everyone.